For the first time in modern history, young graduates are facing unemployment rates higher than the national average. Yeah, that's right. Across the United States, and increasingly across the developed world, the very group that was once guaranteed a head start is now stumbling right out of the gate. Think about how extraordinary this reversal is. For decades, the formula seemed unshakable. Work hard in school, earn a college degree, and doors would open. The college diploma wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a golden ticket. It meant stability, respectability, and a path into the middle class. Parents told their children this story. Governments subsidized it. Students took on mountains of debt believing in it. And for much of the 20th century, it was true. A bachelor's degree nearly guaranteed higher pay. A master's or professional degree was supposed to lift you above the crowd. But today, that promise is collapsing. Recent graduates in their 20s are competing harder than ever, only to find fewer opportunities, lower pay, and less security. Some are moving back in with their parents, saddled with student loans and degrees that don't open the doors they once did. Even elite MBA graduates, once courted by banks and consulting firms, are walking away empty-handed. The data is stark. The wage premium for college degrees has shrunk dramatically in the past decade. The contract between higher education and prosperity is breaking down before our eyes, which leaves us with a pressing question. What went wrong? The struggles of today's graduates didn't begin overnight. They're the aftershocks of economic earthquakes that started more than a decade ago. And we can start with the Great Recession of 2008. When the financial system collapsed, employers froze hiring, gutted training programs, and focused on survival. Entry-level roles, the traditional doorway for young people, were among the first to vanish. For those graduating in 2009, 2010, even 2011, the lost years of weak hiring meant stalled professional development and lower lifetime earnings. Economists call this scarring, the long-term damage of entering the workforce during a downturn. And that scar hasn't faded. By the time the economy regained momentum, the next crisis arrived. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 brought mass layoffs, shuttered businesses, and another hiring freeze. Young workers once again bore the brunt. They were more likely to be in temporary roles, internships, or industries like hospitality and retail that shut down completely. For those in college during the pandemic, internships vanished, networks evaporated, and a smooth transition into the workforce was impossible. Even after economies reopened, the recovery was uneven. Inflation surged, prompting central banks to raise interest rates. The result was a stop-start cycle. Periods of growth followed by sudden slowdowns. For young workers, it meant doors slamming shut just as they reached them. The data proves it. Since the Great Recession, unemployment rates for young graduates have consistently been higher than for older workers. The system has become biased toward proven workers, leaving newcomers stranded. So, what we see today is a generation that grew up playing economic catch-up, and the game still isn't over. When people talk about the future of work, one word dominates the conversation: AI. And for today's graduates, it's more than a buzzword. It's a looming shadow over their careers. Because if there's one part of the workforce most vulnerable to automation, it's the entry-level white-collar jobs that young people have traditionally used to get their start. Think about the kinds of tasks assigned to junior employees in law, consulting, finance, or technology. Reviewing contracts, summarizing case files, building slide decks, cleaning data, debugging code. These are exactly the kinds of repetitive, information-heavy tasks that generative AI systems are now capable of handling. And some firms are already experimenting with this shift. Law practices are using AI to draft and review documents that paralegals use to comb through. Consulting firms are realizing that a single analyst with AI co-pilots can do the work of several recent grads. tech companies are handing more software testing and debugging to automated systems, reducing the need for armies of junior coders. On paper, this is efficiency, but in practice, it means fewer entry points for young workers. The question is, how much of this is reality and how much is hype? Hey, quick pause! If you haven't yet, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to catch more content like this so you don't miss a thing. On the one hand, the narrative that AI is taking all the jobs isn't fully supported by the data yet. Productivity growth remains sluggish, and surveys of employers suggest that AI hasn't massively reduced hiring, at least not so far. On the other hand, perception alone can shape the market. If executives believe AI will eventually handle entry-level work, they may cut back on hiring now, preparing for a future that hasn't fully arrived. And that belief alone can depress opportunities for new graduates. So the truth is a bit more nuanced. AI isn't replacing an entire generation of workers, at least not yet. But it is reshaping the conversation, accelerating the sense that the entry-level ladder is shrinking. For young graduates, that's enough to make the future feel uncertain. With so many warning signs flashing, the obvious question arises, is college still worth it? For generations, the answer was an automatic yes. Higher education was the surest investment you could make in your future. But today, the calculation is far more complicated. In the United States, the costs of a college education have exploded. Tuition, housing, and fees push many students into staggering debt before they've even earned their first paycheck. That debt might be manageable if the college wage premiums were as strong as they once were. But the result today is a generation whose financial lives start in the red, often delaying milestones like buying a home, starting a family, or saving for retirement. Contrast that with much of Europe and parts of Asia, where governments subsidize higher education. There, the calculation is different. Students may still face uncertain job prospects, but at least they're not weighed down by decades of debt. In much of the EU, the risk of a useless degree is cushioned by lower costs. In America, that same degree can feel like an anchor dragging you underwater. Then there's the question of what you study. Not all degrees carry the same risk. Fields like engineering, healthcare, and certain technical sciences still offer relatively stable demand. These areas require hands-on expertise and can't easily be outsourced or automated. On the other hand, degrees in fields with fewer clear career paths, such as some humanities or oversaturated social sciences, carry a higher risk of mismatch between education and employment. It's not that these disciplines lack value, but the labor market doesn't consistently reward them. So, is college worth it? The answer depends on where you live, what you study, and how much debt you're willing to shoulder. For some, higher education remains a powerful tool. For others, it's an expensive gamble. And increasingly, it's a gamble that feels rigged. So where does this leave us? A generation of graduates staring at a future that feels more uncertain than any in recent memory. One possible future is acceleration. Artificial intelligence and automation could continue expanding into white-collar work, cutting off even more entry-level pathways. That doesn't mean work disappears altogether, but the structure of careers may change. Instead of steady ladders, graduates may face a landscape of short contracts, project-based work, and constant retraining. Flexibility will become essential, but so will resilience. Another possible path is reform. Governments could intervene to rethink education and employment pipelines. That might mean funding apprenticeships, incentivizing employers to hire and train young workers, or realigning university programs with actual labor demand. Some countries already experiment with stronger ties between higher education and industry, ensuring that degrees aren't just academic credentials, but practical launchpads. If scaled up, such reforms could restore the sense that education truly pays off. And then there is the darker possibility: stagnation. If costs rise while opportunities shrink, frustration will deepen. A generation that feels overeducated and underemployed may begin to disengage from institutions that promise them more. The stakes here are not just economic, but political and social. Businesses will also have to decide how they adapt. Will they treat AI as a tool to complement human workers, or as a replacement? Will they invest in young talent, knowing it takes time to nurture, or will they hollow out the entry level and hope technology fills the gap? Young people, too, will have choices, whether to pursue traditional degrees, vocational training, or entirely new models of learning designed for a shifting economy. Ultimately, what happens next depends on collective choices: reform or resentment, adaptation or alienation. The job market has always been more than a paycheck. It's a promise of belonging and progress. Break that promise, and the costs echo far beyond economics. Enjoyed this video? Please support the channel by hitting the like button and subscribe for more content like this.